So let's get started, everyone. Welcome, first of all, to the Thunderbird Reading Series. I'm so happy to see a lot of familiar as well as new faces. As most of you know, this is a graduate-run initiative conceived and run entirely by graduates of the Institute of American Indian Arts, MFA Creative Writing class of 2020. So we, first of all, want to extend a thank you to Santi Frazier, the director of the IAIA MFA program, for giving guidance for this series. I would also like to thank all of our readers tonight for presenting their lovely work. And with that, I just have a few reminders before I hand it over to our first reader, Jay. Reminder number one, again, don't forget to mute. We invite you to turn off your video for bandwidth reasons, but you can use the chat in real time if a phrase or image catches your ear, and you can also use emojis as much as you like. Reminder number two, we are also recording, so just please be aware if you do have your video on. Additionally, we're going to have an FAQ directly following this reading. So if you have questions, pop them in the chat. Our lovely tech host will be keeping an eye out, and we'll also take questions over the air once we start the Q&A. All right. Okay, and with that, I want to welcome our first reader, Jay Mercado. Jay is a multidisciplinary artist residing in Flagstaff, Arizona, a recent graduate of the MFA in Creative Writing from the Institute of American Indian Arts. Jay is currently working on a second album of recorded music entitled Dysphoria, as well as developing a poetry manuscript. Recent poems have been published in Finland and Canada. Jay is Pipash and Kitsan and an enrolled member of the Gila River Indian community. And with that, I will turn it over to Jay.
Thank you, Conley. It's really, really lovely to be here to share this moment with all of you. I'm just gonna hop right into it. So I'm reading a couple of sections from my poetry manuscript that I developed over the course of the last year during the MFA. The way that it works, I suppose, I write a poem that acts as like a cinematic intro to a section, and then the section proceeds from there. So I'll read it formatted as such. An invitation to slow burn, metal the mire, slip stitches through sore seams, develop a taste for one's own, skin sharp as bent nails, baked in the sun, beaming on skulls hung over greasewood, plump with mud and bark beetles' wings, unfurled husk of iridescent green arches up toward the moon, tied in foam into dry masks of reed and ivory. This is slow burn. A single plucked string reverberates in the distorted nesting, spitting teeth on canvas. We peel our bare skin again. Beneath the earlobe, the softest part of a memory. As you trace the length of my hollow body raked with picks and fingernails, a sudden gliss rattles the air in my throat. Taut wires fix below the chin, humming fletched bone songs. When your hands shake, wrap them loose around my neck, make me sing for you. So there's an image here that is introduced. It's the butterfly. Towards the end of this sequence, the butterfly meets an untimely demise. So with that, here we go. Sheets of pinned butterfly wings trace my gut like a dull scalpel. All our elbows now oil. We bask again in leftover nectar. This thorax rummage, forceps, the swollen chrysalis, skin, pupil, endued, damp with scales, braided in spindles, a groan, worn like a gown. You flutter, an incense pluming for open windows, draped again in white lace. Blood drapes the space between my selves. Give a bird a window, ask it to bathe, but not breathe. The breath is an omen. Let it linger in the lacquer. Swallow a blue bottle. Nothing figurative about a funeral. Mouth of the tomb, vacant for brittle feathers. Fell asleep with the door open, my body calling. From the hallway, I wake. Need to shower my skin, gritty like a chalkboard. Uneven lines stretch across hands caked in white. Dust, as always, we ended here, tangled and bloating, except not here, since my body is elsewhere, and you're a dream-filled wonder, ribs jutting out of your side. First thing each morning, I turn you on, your mouth static. Help me find the remote, an exit. Unclear what form to take, you hiss for now. It sounds gavel, appears as arches running up your spine. Each day, the mirror calls me stranger. This body, more birdwing than blue. My reflection, blown glass beat with wet stones, we talon. Vent our flesh beneath streams of speckled feather, sagging like meat on a feeding post. All right. So this is the beginning of the next sequence. This first poem is lines pulled out of the, I guess, let's see, lines pulled from my voicemail box. Siri like reads those things for you and lets you know like what's in the message before you actually listen to it. And I just pulled words out of voicemail boxes. Yeah, voicemail box messages. So here we go. I've been thinking, off the record, don't have a reason or anything. Really, mother? I call back. Pick him out, kind, in paragraph, American Moses. If you're free home, we want to see you. I just want to say I love. This sequence is entitled Light. Nurse thumbs a stethoscope inside the bright womb, waiting to be birthed. Out on my still dingy, broad in a plastic gown. I grew up in a digital age of dial-up fuck. Ear against the door that's shut but won't lock. Mom expecting a phone call. Me expecting the hum in my upper thigh to return. Her voice clattered above the monitor's barely audible vibrato. I slept bathed in blue light from these obsolete screens, gateway to my personal euphoric dysphoria, nudging my numb members against warm glass. Intensive care means more tubes, more pills, dead, name hanging on a chart outside the door, my father's name. Slow creak of a door hinge and 5 o'clock shadow scrapes his shirt collar with a swivel of disapproval. I lay prone upon the gritty, waves of cheap carpet in a room that isn't mine, trying not to shut my eyes. She whispers, I'm sorry, in the pale blue light and hum of a television set that watched everything. The dark glass of another moonless window, pale cornflowers swept aside, the cupping blade tongue, hands swimming up my neck, around my shoulders. The weeds cause my eyes to swell. Shut in this dusty ranch, beneath the sky stretched like a flood, filling my lungs with waiting. The first walk we take tethered to an IV monitor, they wheel a man full of holes I recognize from a corner store, leaking all over the tile, smells like vodka and gun smoke. This little duplex smells like sweat, dog piss, and a spritz of Chanel magazine sampling my neck. Never enough glitter to gloss over a busted lip, settle on a silky cream coral, punch my way out the door. And this will be my last poem from the end of this sequence. I will stop writing the body, your body, mine, bodies of water, bodies tied in knots, stag bodies littering highways with antler and fur, the collision of bodies, their unravel and anchor, washing ashore. No skin apart from the soul or breath, in the vein turning blood into blue, though the body will not stop writing me. Thank you.
Jay, that was so beautiful. I'm always just amazed when I listen to your poems because it gives me that element of surprise every time. It's like, I can't wait to see what's coming around the corner.
Thank you, Carmen.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to introduce our next reader. Elee Kraljii Gardiner is the author of 2 poetry books, Trauma Head, winner of the Cogswell Award for Literary Excellence, and Serpentine Loop, nominated for the Souster Award. She is the editor of the anthologies Against Death, 35 essays on living, a finalist for the Montaigne Medal and Hoffer Grand Prize, and V6A, Writing from Vancouver's Downtown East Side, a City of Vancouver Book Award finalist. She holds an MA in Hispanic Literature from University of British Columbia and an MFA in Poetry from the Institute of American Indian Arts. Originally from Boston, Elee lives on the traditional and unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples, where she directs Vancouver Manuscript Intensive. And with that, Elee.
Thank you, Conley. Thank you, Jay and Cynthia, for sharing your words in this space. Jay, that was a really strong reading, and it just was fantastic to hear it. Thank you to Chandra for tech hosting, and to Conley for voicing this space with us. And thank you to everyone on the Thunderbird Reading Board who makes this series live. Okay, so we're peppered across the continent tonight, and I wondered if we could just all take 2 big inhalations to sort of get in the same rhythm. So if you want to, please do. If you don't worry about it. I spent last year thinking about the notion of a poem having a body, thinking about how the poem sits on the page, the musculature of the poem's structure, its bones, how it moves, and so forth. Every physical object or body casts a shadow, and so every poem body leaves what I theorize as poem shadow. The poem shadow is the hazy associative zone of meaning that surrounds the poem. To cast a shadow, we need a light source. What if the light source on the poem is the reader's attention? What are we making here together as I read and you listen? What I'll read tonight is from a 40-page poem called The 24 that considers light, hours, sundials and surroundings, coincidences and doubles. Each piece of poem is time-stamped with a specific hour and minute, which I'll leave on the page and not bring into the air here. In the poem, I address a fictional character, Finland, who's an aspect of myself, a better, faster, stronger self, and myself as confident through this project. Perhaps partly Ken White, who mentored me, or maybe Finland is partly you. Certainly, this reading is for you. Finland, I'm sending you a line to open tomorrow. We'll start writing at the same time. After the ugly hour, we will find we have written the same poem. Once I left a stopwatch running all month. Quietly it collapsed moments I did not use enough. Pressed send, I will rewrite into the perfect future preterite. When and if you find me, I said hello tonight, now. Series become black rectangles, become navy, and your God is a blender. Your God is your weed. Your God is a music. Your God is the blown out lights eating from fingers. You hear the around, not the matter. The pains fill not with other dummies, double silhouette, always the looser, freer. This is the story. The other flies, while one is plumbed by weight. Oh, let me give to obstruction, throw this chill where it might not for another, tangle an engine bent. And in a colossal amphitheater, the city holds a pageant, critifying tight corners, switching needles for pillars, pushing away human from plastic, and confusing the piles. A lift from the screen, diagonal glow, searchlight and unlight house. Hello, what time are you? Somewhere in sheet time, I sidle my hand into yours, and we ride slight disturbance out among other faces. Ours now the artery open, flooded sheets, driving or nothing because constancy erases. Rain laps at the little depression his birthday shovel built. A hole for hole's sake. Practicing survival, burial, immersion. No one asks, how will you know when you're done? We expect rhythm. And sure, one day the red handle stuffed in mud like knife and slice became arrow, a style and an accidental sundial pointing to labor's belief in space and need, shouting and singing into the mouth, made big, to sink his home algebraic, darkened by everything yet to learn. Burn big suits, baby suits, pinstripes, pantaloons scaled to octaves in and out, and inside a wafer sits on a disc on a plinth, toppled by a pendulum in a tower tilted on shale upon the fault line. And it does, and it will, and consider virology and kindness, the city's system of nephrology, the markers of wellness so many are missing. The week faded last year, while here it's morning. Or I could whisper rearrangements of digits just as well, reorder the code, record the oratorio. I have samples that will make you sick all night. An antidote to the scarcity, this slenderness looks so different from its day self. By the door, unlaced sneakers won't talk to me. A ghost a match to the dead house in every window. Amid the sleepers, count the aspects of each room to an instant. Here, I clock the air thinned to sleep. Noises themselves gone watchful in the branches. An ugly hour. Still ugly. Give me the mandate of wood, and I will soak it, bend, smoke, or burn it along the edge of a highway in a camp built of cardboard. Such slanting landscape, isthmusing the individual. Cursor is comb, I explained to a girl thin as a slick. She asks me to write her name as a blank line, and I do, to which the metaphor attaches as if she is the most simple thing in the world. By 3, heavy to the lip, a cup filled with rain, I carried it back through the dream. When I toss cup's contents down the runnel of his back, all those hours of archive, all those hours. Every day at 10:44, I plan for something, and the bells don't ring, and the reminders are canceled by windstorms or electronic hail or grapefruits rolling down the stairs, or that pack of wolves swimming across the inlet. I feed them now, which is to say that I register hunger. And if I sometimes let them sample, so be it. They've swum a long way. Coats sunk in common salt, shivered snow globe, flurried with teeth and licking their lapsang. They stay in the yard mostly. I pull a calendar through my hair, pull pollen off every strand, blonded by bees, and the carcass pile collects in hay tops, hops, enormous hopes. The arrow turned to milk again. There are books I can read with you, and books I can read without you, and all of them are letters to you. A pan of light fallen in the sky. I rule against a few repository islands drifting by. What do I owe us, Finland? Bring me markers, I plead, and I do. passing them through the tiny slot under the floating rib. Cream, ochre, milk, the dark pane limed gold, a reminder to you to suspect myself. Only as angry as the late afternoon, trial papers melt my prints from the drive, from deep grass, but not in the clear. Punchlines peel down cedar, stripe an open cutlery drawer. No, I'm lining to you. I mop inside diagram until oval, then loosen a polka reply. Lapping at the dish, someone trips the light and washes stairs. Oh, it's me, Finland. Cans roll in the dark wind, raising lazy. I go and gild the window in wild movement. In Ambien, in oats, I'm not sure remind me what you call it, I buried a vague somewhere the last time. Wasn't it when the no, that, gone equivocal in the next room? Turn on the lamps. This is where we're doing with that one and the other, all of you chirping out little blue, those. I cast up to fog the bell of a cough, and my lonely old limps behind. Complication. Glass umbrella held above a bee, a foot over wet grass. Lean against the laurel until your pulses match. All day counting light bulbs. Oculus, 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 umbilicus. The house sighs, puts hands on hips. I've grown 3 inches this week and am practicing. Already my molecules trespass in last year, where it's a split decision if things are worse. If I can keep my body disassembling, maintain the correct number, I should be okay. An article about raised beds got me thinking. I flattened juice boxes with my heel and stitched them into dresses for my husband. My baby wears popsicle boots and twist-tie diapers. So we don't use the tub now except to harvest kumquats. So I made a fist-wide trail of dirt from the kitchen, and it's yielding. Every morning, the 3 of us get down on our knees and sing. Somewhere outside the dictionary, I bump into my son, and he is both the previous occupant and the future archipelago sprouted out. Overnight in the living room, biproductory volcano smoke smeared the ceiling. Maybe vinegar? I do feel a little devilish this time. New lands have been here longer than I think. The story isn't about reflex, but about reflex and repatterning. If I can do the verb in anteriority on this gentle disentangling from greens, maybe the view from the living room will change. Decades from now ago, I abandoned the house, and inside visible from satellite of the inner orbit. Continentally, not sure what contiguous means I've been feeling. Thank you.
That was so lovely, Elee. I always mediate on your poems for a long time after you read, so I am sure that many of these lines will just keep rolling in my head as little glimmers. All right. And now I'm going to introduce our final reader, Cynthia. Cynthia Cruz is a writer and multidisciplinary artist. Cruz is the author of 6 collections of poems, Guidebooks for the Dead, 4-Way Books 2020, Dregs, 4-Way Books 2018, How the End Begins, 4-Way Books 2016, Wunderkammer, The Glimmering Room, and Ruin. She is also the editor of Other Musics, an anthology of contemporary Latina poetry, Disquieting, Essays on Silence, a collection of critical essays exploring the concept of silence as a form of resistance, was published by Book Hug in the spring of 2019. The Melancholia of Class, her second collection of critical essays, an exploration of melancholia and the working class, is forthcoming from Repeater Books in 2021. Cruz teaches at the City University of New York and in the MFA writing program at Columbia University.
Thank you. So I'm going to read poems. You can all hear me? Yeah. I'm going to read poems from Guidebooks for the Dead, my newest book, and then 2 new poems at the end. So I'm just going to start. Guidebooks for the Dead. Drink tap water only in large cities. Drink boiled water and thinned tea. It is not advisable except in hotels. Take tablets of Resocan Bayer. Then let it sit for 10 minutes in potassium permanganate. Change sweat-soaked underwear. Wash once a day with soap. Don't shower more than 3 times a day, using 1 part mercuric chloride per 1,000. When possible, peel fresh fruit. When not, wash with soap. This is called Dura, Poverty. And the Dura is Margaret Dura, Poverty. She removes herself from the tremendous stink of poverty. Poverty, poverty. Then say it again. Poverty, detritus, shit. But also glitter, gutter, silver, grammar. From out of the cut comes the sound of the new. Guidebooks for the Dead. The starting point was mystical. I could feel something bright as it left the body. What I wouldn't give to go back to my tiny, almost Russian childhood. Mother in her crimson gown and stage makeup, baby blue glitter shadow, and her long, beautiful arms, changing me into her small, blonde princess. When the wheel moves by, night is gone. This life is gone. There will be no other life other than the sweet, lavender sweet, blossoming dream of this one. In the porcelain room. In the porcelain room, Margaret Dura is showing me the scars behind the wall, the juju within the fold. What is this music, she asks. In a headdress of bright red flowers and vine, she is still a child. In her gold lame heels, her pale cheeks smeared red. Porcelain shimmering, broken and glorious. Hold my hand, reader, Clarice Lispector whispers. We are on the raft of dead women. In the porcelain room. We are moving toward the end of everything. We are heading toward the city. It is on fire. We are going to retrieve the corpse of our dead sister. Naked, she is sitting near the phone, smoking on the stained bare mattress. Blood and cuts and fever. She leans toward the camera and she whispers. In the porcelain room. Inside the broken hive of glass bells and whispers, Clarice Lispector whispers. The red and black creature is the dearest. Her hands are lost someplace. They are covering the gape of her mouth. Guidebooks for the Dead. Set the thick black cream on the porcelain platters, along the ice-cold floor of the locked hotel bathroom. Set the needle back down on the spinning black disc of the album titled Self-Portrait in Silver Lycra and Crimson Ballet Stockings. Inside the broken border of this bleak frame, a gold miniature theater, replete with border of white death flowers. Now let the yellow demons come. Let the soft spell of quiet darkness, let mesmer and stars, filth and accretion, books and magazines, clothes, shoes, and talismans, ephemera toward the shore of memory, back. Medicine and magazines. Glitter of leaves near the gutter at the Museum of Natural Tragedy. Succulents, bougainvillea, the toilet of our history. California solves the plum-like hum of death's white music. Guidebooks for the dead. The soft machinery of photographs. Memories of inherited sorrow or questions lost. A summer of wool and excrement. Rumors inside the little black plastic box. I hear his voice, an animal, a doll inside the puppet show. Shit in a cardboard box. Nothing, just the matter of loss and dislocation. Whiskey, Death, or the Book. Hotel rooms with crystal chandeliers and the habit of medicine. Broken china and the trick of vanishing. A bright red bead of pomp and the fever of trauma. Mother's silver rayon gown with brother's sky blue pony sneakers. Stars alone in the dark ceremony of the garden, painting my face a white mask in preparation for another childlike game of death. Guidebooks for the dead. Or the beginnings of deadly illness. I exist only inside its murky frame. Dirt and dregs, filth and silt. Mother's red and silver suitcase filled with old lottery tickets and photographs. Everything behind us is before us, stretched out in endless gray horizon. What we don't remember lives in us forever. Guidebooks for the dead. Oh bright red lamp, oh flame. Oh leaked mascara caked at the bottom of my brown leather satchel. Alone, my only friend, feral and animal, and the bright red lamp that leads me. Guidebooks for the dead. Mother's crimson leather bags crammed with saint cards and tiny glass bottles. The bright stitch of God's final coming. Dirt and dregs, silt and stars. The sweet song of poverty rinsing through like the memory of a dream. The Siberian Wolf and Horse. Poverty and sorrow change the face. Everything I own, I sold. Silver liner along the eyes and cobalt cream eyeshadow. Living inside the desert missile range. White ash chalk, small lace dust of what is left. And analog. A photograph and the black marks of memory, fixed inside the archive of the mind, like a memory. On the train to Versailles. Of anesthesia, of tin bins of names piled up in numbers. A Bellatar like winter, an old water-pocked calendar discovered among the ruins. The blacking archive of history, finally all the sweet windows sealed shut. Okay, so that's that. And then I have these two new poems that I'm going to read you. And they don't have titles. And there was a quote that I used to have at the top of one of them, but I'm not reading that anymore. So the first one is called, it doesn't have a title. The first one is not called anything. It goes like this. The milky horse pulls through the white death of morning. Its wooden carriage, a whir of silence, a blanket of glimmering snow. We have stayed awake every night until dawn. awaiting the arrival of the gelatinous and darkening garden. Now is the hour when people will die, the hour when children are born. It is the hour memory returns, dim film or dream, a second amnesiac birth. Now is the hour the veils of the mind are finally and irrevocably broken. And this is the last one, autobiography. This does have a title, autobiography. The pale wool of summer in the hills of Northern California, chasing the strange animals through the yellowing fields. Then, caught in the dark globes of the moon's cast shadows. At night we listened for the otherworldly murmur and static of radio and the thick white silence of patrol cars coasting down the gravel driveway, government spies trying to find my father. In a dream, he goes blind, drowns in his white suit beneath the blue Wyoming water. I set glass bowls of clear jelly at the sill to ward off the unforeseeable future. Thank you.
Yay, Cynthia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so just wanted to give a heads up to our audience that we are going to go about 5 minutes over time due to our late start, but we want to make sure that everyone's able to ask their questions and that we can get some good discussion going. So if you have to drop at the top of the hour, no worries. If not, please stay on for a few minutes longer. And with that, I will open up the floor for questions. Feel free to put questions in the chat, or you can also message them directly to our tech host, Chandra, or you can unmute yourself and ask them with your voice. We are not picky. I can kick us off with a question while everyone is thinking. This question is actually for Jay and Elee. I know both of you read Cynthia's work early on in your MFA. How did that influence your growth as a poetry student and maybe what you're writing now? Not to start you off with a softball or anything.
My cue. So I was assigned Cynthia's book, The Glimmering Room, during my first semester. And truthfully, prior to being in the MFA, I had only really written poems for fun. I wouldn't say by any means that I was a poet coming into the program. And so I think that that collection really just opened up a world for me, and more so like showed me, like gave me proof like that I could sift through, that you could build worlds from within your imagination and transport the reader through the text, carry them through the text. And I mean, even to go beyond that, with some of the like heaviness and the darkness that I try to acknowledge and incorporate into my work, you could carry the people that you love, like their bodies through, you could carry your own body through a poem text. And yeah, I owe a great deal to Cynthia and to that work. And just the lexicon especially was just so fresh, and yeah, inspired me greatly, definitely.
So I read Cynthia's book, Disquieting, which is essays on silence. I also read Dregs, but I remember reading the essays. I did a lot of reading that wasn't about poetry necessarily, but it gave me a pause to think about sound, which was something I was really trying to discover. So that was one of the ways that I was attaching to Cynthia's work. And funny enough, Jay and I, when we were thinking about this reading, we were brainstorming about who would be so fun to read with. And we came up with Cynthia's name and we're like, yay, let's ask her, let's ask her. And then we found out that she had just been hired at IA as the new poetry mentor, which was completely unbeknownst to us. So we feel very powerful. And if anybody wants a job, we can manifest that for you.
That's like the poetry version of The Secret. I love it. So Cynthia, for those of us who maybe haven't read Disquieting, can you talk a little bit about how you use silence in your work and how you approach that in that collection?
Yeah, that's a hard question, but not that you're going to ask me about the book specifically, but no, but I think it's related. So I think a lot of what I was thinking about when I was working on the book was it was a little defensive, because I feel like people who are quiet in our culture, I feel like in our culture, it's really important to be able to articulate everything and be able to sort of sell yourself, right? This is neoliberalism and capitalism. So if you can't, or if you refuse that, or if you, it makes you nervous, if you are anxious, then you just become marginalized. But then also people who are also marginalized tend to also be quiet, right? If you're traumatized and all this. So I was thinking about that and how that very silences further. So I was trying to articulate that. And I hope I was able to do that. But so, right. So I think especially, it's funny, I think a lot of the poems where I work in couplets and there's this energy that moves through is not so much the silencing, but I think the poems in Guidebooks for the Dead and Dregs, on the page, they're very small and the whole page is just very quiet. There's just nothing there. And that was intentional. I wanted to really just work with objects and sound. Sort of the other thing I was thinking about was, so we can't stay quiet. To stay quiet is to be invisible, right? So that's not a possibility. So then there has to be a third way. And so it's not just making a new language. The language has to come up from our own experience. Jay was talking about this really beautifully. I thought that it's not right. It's not like I have to create something separate that's not related to me. It comes out of my own experience, but I just, yeah, I guess try to feed that voice and make that the voice. And then it is a different voice, if that makes any sense. But it's a good question. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm also, just as an aside, I'm very impressed by poets when they bring that structure not just into the verbal and the way that they're reading on the line, but also as it looks on the page. As a fiction writer, you know, we don't do that. We just hand people a bunch of paragraphs and hope that they work. So I always find that very impressive. Let's see. We've got a great question in the chat here from Imogene. How has the elongated period of physical distancing affected your writing in terms of subject, tone, and imagery? And that's for everyone.
I can answer that very quickly. It has affected it by completely putting the kibosh on my writing. I have not been writing at all, and it's been a precipitous and very sad, abrupt end to what was a complete whirlwind of creative juice. So I'm not writing. I'm gathering right now.
I had a very short period where I wrote, I think, 4 or 5 poems, I think. And I taught, I think, 4 or 5 workshops this summer. So I was talking to a lot of poets, and a lot of poets were talking about it. They couldn't write about what was happening, and that makes sense to me. But I also think we don't have to write technically, literally about the virus, right? Or right, there's other ways. And so the poems that I read, I think, I mean, my belief is we're like already in the dystopia, and then this happened. I already was in this place where, like, it's already the end. So it's, I don't know. So I was able to write those poems, but luckily, I guess, I'm in the process of revising this book of essays that's due in 2 weeks. So I've been very busy all summer. So I'm working on these essays. So that gives me a focus for all of this energy. And I feel really grateful for that, because otherwise I would feel bad, I think, that I'm not working on any poems.
Well, I think about the period from March towards the beginning of like the COVID, like the ramp up from the pandemic, until May, when our thesis was due for the program. Essentially, in that 2-month period, I became nocturnal. I stayed up until 3 or 4 in the morning every night, writing, truthfully editing the manuscript. And I'd say probably a third of the manuscript was written or edited during that time. And so it was I think that the hour was necessary. That was like the hour of those poems, like invocation. Like I had to be. We talk a lot about disembodiment in the manuscript, and sort of the other self, the duality of self. And so I felt like I tapped into that energy in those wee hours of the morning when the house is quiet and when I could just turn all the lights off and listen to music and just be in the text. And so it maybe it wasn't the greatest thing for my just like physical well-being, because it took a lot of time to reset after that. But I just felt like the work demanded something of me, some kind of, you know, just short of a blood sacrifice from me to like make it what it became. So it was necessary. It was helpful for creativity in the sense that I was able to just relay this sort of dark experience of being in isolation and unsuredness. So yeah, it was as far as writing goes, it was not terrible.
So Jay, I'm going to follow up on something I just heard you say about your use of doubles and alter egos. Talk a little bit more about that, and what that means to your work.
Wow. Yeah. I don't know if it was necessarily portrayed in, I guess to some degree, it existed in the work that I shared this evening, but for me, it's necessary to have, I guess, to create these like other realities, one, and two, to create different versions of I, the figure I within the poem. So I would say that the doubles that exist in my work, they're both, well, they're really just representative of, I guess, personal experience. Like I found a way to distance myself enough to speak freely and to allow the poem to just kind of like use me as a conduit for those experiences. And then at the same time, I use it in a sense as an effect to slip in and out of reality. In one section of the poem, I talk about an underneath. It's not a dissimilar concept from the shadow poem, but rather kind of plays off our day one teachings at IA about the iceberg. Like the poem is just the tip of the iceberg on the page, and there's like a whole other iceberg beneath the surface. And I just wanted to talk about what was beneath the surface and like let those things emerge. And so yeah, I guess there's various ways in which the double is necessary and presents itself in the work, but those, I guess, are just a few that come to mind.
That's awesome, Jay. Elee, Cynthia, do you guys use a lot of personas in your work?
I mean, yeah, I basically invented this heteronym a heteronym is a name for more than two people. So using this idea of Finland to encapsulate not only what I want to be, but like an ideal reader and a best part of myself. And I chose the name Finland for a few different reasons. One, it's a place I want to get to in my poetry, so it's actually a geographic place. I live in Vancouver here, and there are similarities in the coastline, the rocky coastline, and the pine trees and stuff that make Finland seem familiar. And yet my point in coming to IA was to try to become strange to myself and to try to break my poetic gate and walk differently into a poem. So I wanted to become foreign to myself. And Finland is a place that I don't know much about. Something that I love about it is that it linguistically is completely isolated from other language streams. So it really does have a language of its own. And this was a place that I wanted to get to.
I don't think I do. I mean, I think persona poems, but what I do sometimes, so all the poems that I write are not necessarily from my point of view. So when I think of a persona poem, I think of writing a poem from the point of view of like Snow White or something, right? So I don't think I do that so much. But I think sometimes, right, sometimes the I is not really who I am, but I think it's always like that, right? I think.
Yeah, I feel like there's very few, even writers in general, both poets and fiction writers, who, when they write I or when they write in a specific point of view, are always talking about themselves or someone in relation to them. All right, I think we have time for one more question. If anyone from our audience would like to drop something into the chat.
I have one.
Yes, Chandra.
I did not put it into the chat, but my question is for Cynthia, and it's half serious and half a joke on myself. So I am looking forward to becoming more familiar with your work after this, but what I noticed from your reading from Guidebooks for the Dead was that you just wrote so beautifully about sorrow and inhabiting a time that's gone by and all of these things. And those are things that come up in my work. But I write essays. I don't write hauntingly gorgeous poetry. So am I allowed to write about nostalgia and not sound sappy and like a jerk?
You guys, the questions are so good. You like when you were talking, I was expecting a question, and then the question that you sent me was so different than what I expected. So I'm not. So I would say I'm writing out of melancholia. So right, and melancholia, technically, I'm sure you know, but melancholia is when there's something that's been lost that that I don't know what it is. This is the book on working class or class. So because we don't talk about class in this country, there's no class. So if you, so to become a poet, I didn't have to, but I went to grad school, I became this other thing. And at a certain point I realized that all the things about where I grew up, I lost. But when I talk to people about class, people say, but there's no class. So I'll never be able to move through that. So I would say a lot of, I write out of this melancholia, and then I'm working on essays about the melancholia, but they're not personal essays, they're more like critical essays. So, but all of that isn't answering your question. Of course you can. And why not, right?
I don't know if I'll ever pull it off like that though.
Yeah, you can. And haunting is the best way of writing, for sure.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank you for your question.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then we will go ahead and close our reading. We've reached the end of our time. So thank you to everyone for coming, and for your lovely comments, and for all the beautiful things that you picked out in the chat. We're so thankful to get to see you even through our screens. Thank you to our readers, Jay, Elee, and Cynthia, and our tech host, Chandra. I am also going to turn it over to Chandra for a little bit of information on the final reading in the Thunderbird series.
Thank you, Conley. Really beautiful job, everyone. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for being here. That was really incredible. So we have our finale next week. I can't believe it. This has been such an amazing series. It's all thanks to the alumni from IA, from the really hard work of people like Elee, Jay, Conley, some folks who were here in the audience tonight, and we might have a fun surprise for a host who might be with us tonight. I can't quite announce that yet, but that's something we're really excited about. This has been a really incredible series that we're really just like hoping to kind of say farewell with a bang for this summer. So that's next Thursday, August 20th at, I believe, 6 p.m. Pacific. Is that what we said? 6 p.m. Pacific, I think. Thursday, August 20th, there will be more coming out. So mark your calendars. Hope to see you there. Guyana.
All right, we will see you then. Bye, everyone.